The cell stank of blood and salt. Chains creaked like whispers in the dark. And Bonny sat hunched in the corner, her red hair clotted with ash, her hands still bruised from the fight. Mary lay beside her, coughing, each breath a razor in her lungs. Footsteps echoed through the stone corridor. They came like death itself, measured, merciless. A guard stopped at the bars and snarled, "Tomorrow. The gallows." And raised her head, eyes gleaming like embers. "We'll see about that," she rasped. And then, in the cold silence of the cell, both women began to laugh. Not out of madness, but defiance. They were hunted, betrayed, and forgotten. But Anne and Mary didn't vanish. They became the storm. Listen closely. In a world where pirates ruled the seas and only men were allowed to claim glory, two women dared to challenge everything. And Bonny, fierce and relentless, escaped the chains of society. Mary Red, forged in war and loss, disguised herself to survive. Together, they sailed under black flags, fought with fire in their eyes, and carved their names into the bones of history. This is not just a tale of treasure and blood. It's a story of rebellion, of love, betrayal, and unimaginable courage. The story of two souls who refused to be forgotten and became legends of the storm. Night fell heavy over Nassau. Thunder rumbled deep, like ancient cannon fire echoing from the sea's memory. In the shadows of the docks, a figure moved like smoke, silent, sharp-eyed, dangerous. Her name wasn't Bonny, though few knew it. Salt clung to her skin, wind tore at her coat, and beneath her tricorn hat, flaming red curls were tied back tight like secrets. Her fingers curled around the hilt of a dagger hidden under her belt. She had stolen clothes from a dead sailor, baggy trousers, a linen shirt, boots still damp from blood and brine. Around her, drunken pirates sang of gold and death. But Anne didn't sing. She watched a ship bobbing at anchor like it breathed, the Revenge. It was Calico Jack's ship, and if the plan worked, she'd be aboard by morning. As a man, as a fighter, as something no one would expect. Lightning cracked over the bay, revealing ghostly masts and pale waves. She smiled. It wasn't fear she felt, it was hunger. For freedom. For fire. For something more than a woman's place in the world. From the shadows, another pair of eyes watched her. Someone who, like Anne, had secrets stitched into her skin, and had no last name aboard the Revenge. Names were dangerous, especially for women. She stood before Calico Jack that morning, her body bound in cloth, voice rough like a cabin boy's. "I want to join your crew," she said, eyes unflinching. Jack narrowed his gaze. He was no fool. A man with too many secrets didn't last long on the sea. But something about this boy intrigued him. Jack Rackham, Calico Jack, was infamous. Not for slaughter, but for style. He wore bright coats, colourful sashes, and a gold-trimmed hat too large for his head. He was charming, reckless, and utterly dangerous. After the pirates' code outlawed women aboard ships, he had no business letting Anne near the deck. But he didn't care for rules. He cared for results. And when Anne beat two of his men with a wooden sword in a test of skill, he simply laughed. Welcome aboard, lad. That night, under a salted sky, and watched the stars above the mast. She had made it. No longer hidden behind the skirts of her past. She wasn't the daughter of a disgraced lawyer or the wife of a failed pirate. She was a blade among blades, sharp and unseen. But her secret still lingered like thunder beyond the horizon. And soon, another woman in disguise would join her. One who had also carved her path through a world that wasn't built for her. The sea had a way of revealing truth, or hiding it forever beneath the waves. The Revenge creaked under the moonlight, its belly full of barrels, gunpowder, and quiet lies. Below deck, in the lowest, dampest corner of the ship, a new recruit lay half-conscious, recovering from a fever. No one asked who she was, just another stray picked up after a merchant ship had burned in the distance. They called her Mark. But her name was Mary Red. Before she ever held a cutlass, Mary held a musket. She'd fought as a man in the War of the Spanish Succession, riding with the cavalry. She bled for kings who never knew her name. After the war, she tried peace, marriage, a quiet inn. But peace had no place for someone with fire in their chest. When her husband died, she returned to the sea. The ship she joined was captured. She was taken aboard the Revenge, sick but silent, and noticed her first. There was something in her stare, too direct, too steady, like a mirror held up to one's own disguise. Late one night, while rain ticked softly against the planks and waves licked the hull like whispers, and crouched beside her. "You're not Mark," as she whispered. Mary opened one eye. "Neither are you." Silence. Then laughter, quiet, breathy, full of something both women hadn't felt in years, understanding. From that moment, they were no longer alone. The sun rose over the deck of the Revenge, painting the sky with bruises of orange and purple. Another day at sea. Another day pretending. Anne and Mary worked shoulder to shoulder, hoisting sails, scrubbing decks, loading muskets. To the crew, they were just two wiry lads with sharp tongues and quicker blades. But there was something different in the way they moved. A rhythm. Like a dance only they knew. And had proven herself already. Her swordsmanship was unmatched. Her fearlessness, unquestioned. Mary was quieter, but deadly with a pistol. She hit bottles mid-air with a single shot and could reload before most had even drawn. Still, whispers crept across the deck. Those two are too close. Something strange about them. But suspicion was swallowed by usefulness. Life on a pirate ship was harsh, ruled by the pirate code. Equal pay for equal work. Vote for every decision. No fighting below deck. And most importantly, loyalty to the crew above all else. Calico Jack didn't care who you were if you bled for him. But even he began to wonder. One night, as the ship sailed past Tortuga's outline, Jack called into his cabin. "You fight like a demon," he said, swirling rum in his cup. "And your friend, she's got thunder in her hands. But I know what I see." Anne's jaw tensed. "Then say it." Jack leaned closer, voice low. "I see two people running from something. Same way I did once." Silence. Then, a nod. If the sea's your refuge, then let it be. And left the cabin that night with her secret intact. But the wind had shifted, and storms, real and within, were beginning to rise. The lookout shouted before dawn. Canvas on the horizon. A merchant ship, fat and slow, drifted just north of Hispaniola. Calico Jack didn't hesitate. Ready the guns. Boarding crew, sharp and silent. Anne and Mary stood at the rail, heartbeats pounding in sync. They'd trained for this. But this was real. The sea roared below as the Revenge carved through the waves, closing in. The merchant vessel tried to flee, but its sails were heavy and foolishly wide. Anne slid a cutlass into her belt. Mary loaded 2 pistols, tucked one into Anne's coat without a word. The 2 ships collided with a thundering crash. Ropes were thrown, hooks bit into wood, and then came the shout. Board her! Chaos exploded. Anne vaulted first, landing with a snarl. Her blade met steel. Sparks flew. Mary followed, firing once, twice. A man dropped at Anne's feet. They moved like ghosts, 2 shadows in motion, one watching the other's back, no words needed. Screams filled the air. The merchant sailors weren't fighters. Some surrendered. Some begged. Others bled. And didn't kill for fun. But she didn't hesitate. Neither did Mary. Survival wasn't clean. When it was over, the deck was painted in salt and red. The crew cheered. Gold was hauled from the hold. Spices, silks, crates of coin. Calico Jack grinned. That's how you make a name. But that night, Anne sat beside Mary in the dark, hands trembling. I've never, as she whispered. Mary placed a steady hand over hers. Now you have. No judgment. No comfort. Just understanding. Above them, the stars blinked silently, watching 2 women carve space for themselves in a world built to erase them. The sea was calm that night. No wind. No clouds. Just a blanket of stars stretching over the black water. Anne lay beside Mary on the upper deck, backs against the warm wood, listening to the ship breathe. They hadn't spoken in hours, not with words. Only glances during meals, silent nods during training, shared smirks when one of the crew said something foolish. Then, quietly, Mary spoke. My mother dressed me as a boy when I was barely walking. Said there was no food for daughters. But sons could work. Her voice was soft, flat, like she'd told the story too many times to cry over it anymore. I grew into the lie, as she continued. Joined the cavalry. Wore armor. Killed men. No one asked questions. Not until I fell in love. And turned her head. With a woman. Mary shook hers. No. A soldier. He found out what I was. And didn't care. We left the army. Bought a little in near Brader. For a while, I believed peace was enough. A pause. Then, he died. Fever took him. I sold the inn. Went back to the sea. War was easier than grief. Silence settled again, broken only by a gull's distant cry and the slow creak of the mast. And didn't speak. Just reached out and let her fingers graze Mary's hand. Rough skin met rough skin. Neither pulled away. For two women who had lived too long behind masks, this was the closest thing to truth. The stars didn't judge. The sea didn't ask questions. And the Revenge kept sailing toward a future they still didn't dare to imagine. There was smoke on the deck, but no fire. Just pipes, burning slow in pirate mouths, and eyes sharper than steel. And had become too confident. She walked taller. Spoke louder. Mary laughed more. Moved freer. Together, they were no longer shadows, they were noticed. Whispers slithered through the hammocks. They bathe alone. Talk in strange tongue. Not natural. Superstition ran deep on pirate ships. A black cat could doom a voyage. A woman on board. That was curse made flesh. Calico Jack saw it. He watched, and from the quarterdeck with narrowed eyes, not like a lover, but like a captain measuring risk. Their nights had grown distant, and no longer came to his cabin as often. When she did, her eyes wandered to the stars, not to him. Jack drank more, shouted louder, beat a man for spilling rum. That evening, as the sun bled into the ocean, Jack called a crew meeting. Barrels were turned into seats. Men leaned in with suspicion thick in their throats. "We have traitors among us," a Jack said, voice heavy. "Liars. Secrets. And I don't like secrets." And stood beside Mary, jaw tight. She knew the play. Jack wasn't just warning the crew, he was warning her. But Mary's fingers brushed hers again, light as air. A reminder, you're not alone. The meeting ended with threats and rum. But no names. Yet. Later that night, and stared into the water, watching the ship's reflection ripple. "Jack's going to break," she whispered. Mary nodded. "Let's break first." Dawn broke red. A merchant brig had been spotted near Cuba, sails white, hull fat with promise. No time for doubt. No time for fear. The crew of the Revenge prepared in silence. Calico Jack didn't speak to Anne. She didn't look at him. But Mary stood beside her, shoulder to shoulder, like always. They boarded with steel and smoke. Grappling hooks flew. Muskets cracked. And leapt first, cutlass in hand, spinning through a cloud of gunpowder, slicing through confusion. Mary was right behind her, pistol raised. The fight was messy. The merchant crew had hired guards, real soldiers. Not scared boys with coins in their pockets. Steel clashed against steel. Blood soaked the deck. And screamed a warning, but too late. A bayonet caught Mary below the ribs. Time slowed. And turned just as Mary fell, eyes wide, blood blooming across her shirt like spilled wine. The world vanished. All sound died, save for the soft hiss of the sea and Mary's breath. Short, fast, desperate. "No, no, no," Anne dropped beside her, hands pressing into the wound. Mary coughed, blood on her lips. "Keep fighting." And didn't. She dragged her from the battle, teeth clenched, sword forgotten. Around them, pirates and guards tore at each other like wolves, but saw only her. Back aboard the Revenge, and stood over her, blade dripping, daring anyone to come close. "She needs a surgeon," as she growled. Jack appeared. He looked at Mary, bleeding, pale, and then at Anne. "What is she to you?" he asked coldly, and met his gaze, eyes burning. "Everything." The days blurred. Mary drifted between fevered dreams and silence, her skin pale, her breath shallow, and never left her side. She fed her by hand, washed her wounds with rum, spoke to her, even when Mary didn't respond. "Do you remember the inn?" she whispered one night. "The firelight? The smell of old wood? You told me you were safe, once. You'll be safe again. I swear it." Outside the cabin door, the crew murmured, "She's hiding something. Why does the captain allow it? They share more than rum." Rumors didn't need proof. They only needed ears. One morning, as sunlight crept in like a thief, Mary finally opened her eyes. She blinked slowly, then smiled, weakly. "You look terrible," and laughed through a sob. "You've looked better." Silence followed, but it was warm, full of something new, something fragile. Then came the knock. The door opened before Anne could move. 3 men. Big. Armed. Angry. "We know what you are," one of them spat. "The both of you." Anne rose slowly. She didn't reach for her blade. She didn't need to. Her eyes cut deeper. "She's injured," as she said. "Step back." "Not anymore," came a voice behind them. Mary had stood, barely, but tall. Blood still stained her shirt, but her eyes burned. "If you touch her, you'll bleed more than I ever have." The men hesitated, then left. But the line had been crossed. That night, Calico Jack called them both to his quarters. "We need to talk," he said. And for the first time, his voice shook. The cabin smelled of salt, smoke, and decision. Calico Jack stood at the map table, fingers drumming along the stained wood. He didn't look at them as they entered, and with fire behind his silence, Mary still pale but standing. Outside, the sea whispered against the hull, waiting. Jack finally spoke. "You lied." And said nothing. Mary crossed her arms. "We survived." "You broke the code," he snapped. "You brought a curse aboard. The men are afraid. And I." He stopped and stepped forward. "And you what? Loved me?" Jack's jaw clenched. The word hung there, too bitter to swallow. She didn't need him to say it. She already knew. "You fought beside me," he said, voice lower. "You were the best damn pirate I ever sailed with. But this..." He gestured between them. "They won't follow you now. They'll mutiny. Or kill you. Or me." Mary moved to Anne's side. "Then don't give them the chance." Jack stared at her, then at Anne. Then down at the map, where islands bled red and blue from spilled ink and blood. There's an inlet near Negril, he muttered. Quiet. Hidden. If you leave tonight, they won't know until morning. And tilted her head. You're letting us go? I'm giving you a chance, he said. Same as I wanted once. A long silence filled the cabin. Then and spoke softly, a thank you. Jack's eyes didn't meet hers. Get off my ship. They left the cabin as ghosts, silent, swift, unbroken. That night, while the crew drank and dice clattered across barrels, two figures slipped into the shadows with a stolen rowboat, a bag of powder, and a compass pointing not north, but free. The oars sliced through black water like whispers in a church. Each stroke echoed into the dark, sending ripples toward memory. And sat at the bow, watching the stars disappear behind clouds. Mary rowed, slow, steady, as if the rhythm could keep her heart from pounding. Behind them, the Revenge shrank into a dot of light. Ahead, a jagged shadow of land, framed by forks of lightning on the horizon. You think he'll regret it? Mary finally asked. And didn't answer. The silence between them was softer than words. They had no plan. Just a compass, a knife, 2 pistols, and a bag of stone silver. But that was more than they'd ever had before. The rain began gently, like a secret being told to the ocean, and tipped her face upward, letting it wash the salt from her skin. He chose safety, as she murmured. Mary smirked. We chose fire. As the boat neared shore, a sudden howl split the night, not human. Dogs? No, something deeper. Drums? They ducked instinctively, crouching low as flickers of firelight danced between the trees. Someone, or something, was already on the beach. Mary reached for her pistol and stopped her with a hand. Not yet. The storm crashed down suddenly, a wall of rain pounding the waves and washing all sound into chaos. The rowboat shuddered as it scraped against wet sand. They were no longer pirates on a ship. They were prey in the jungle. But Anne's eyes shone, even in the dark. She smiled. I've never felt more alive. And into the shadows they disappeared, 2 outlaws, armed with courage, hunted by fate. The jungle was not silent. It breathed. Leaves trembled with the weight of rain. Branches creaked like tired bones. And beneath it all, voices, low, sharp, clipped in a language and couldn't place. And crouched behind a fallen palm, her soaked shirt clinging to her skin. Mary lay beside her, pressing one ear to the earth. 3, maybe 4, she whispered. Men. Armed. And drunk. And peeked through the foliage. A fire burned in the clearing ahead. Around it, crates of rum, stacked powder kegs, sacks of coin, and men too lazy to guard them properly. Smugglers. Mary's mouth curled into a smile. Looks like we found a new crew. And looked at the weapons strapped to their belts. Looks like they're still breathing. Mary leaned in. For now. They waited. Watched. Measured the rhythm of the camp. When one man stumbled off into the brush to relieve himself, Mary followed like a shadow. Minutes later, she returned with a musket and no remorse. By dawn, only 2 were left conscious. The others, tied, groaning, and robbed of every ounce of pride, and stood tall before the fire, hair tangled, boots muddy, pistol raised. "Names and Bonny," Ishi said. "That's Mary Red. We're not here to steal your gold. We're here to take your ship." One smuggler, older, half-blind, dared to laugh. "Ship's got no captain," he rasped, and cocked the pistol. "Now it does." Silence. Then, the old man dropped to one knee. "Aye, Captain." The jungle watched, silent once more. The fire crackled. The rain eased. Mary looked to Anne, eyes gleaming. "You just stole a crew." Anne grinned. "No, I just earned one." Dawn crept in slowly, washing the jungle's edge in a pale gold. The captured smuggler's ship, the Delilah, rocked gently at anchor, its sails still furled, hull battered but proud, and stood on the quarter-deck, soaked to the bone, hand gripping the helm like it was forged for her palm. Mary leaned over the rail, watching the horizon with a gaze sharp as cutlass steel. They had spent the night securing the cargo hold, binding the surviving smugglers, and dragging the unconscious ones aboard. A few had begged for their lives. A few had smiled, already swayed by the wild-eyed fire in Anne's voice. Now they were hers. Every last one. And paced the deck, boots thudding softly, rain dripping from her tricorn hat. The wind smelled of salt, smoke, and freedom. "I want the black flag," Ishi said, voice low and steady. "Not hiding anymore." Mary turned, raising an eyebrow. "The Jolly Roger?" "No," Aaron grinned. "Ours." With stolen cloth, a jagged blade, and rum-stained creativity, they stitched their own mark, twin daggers crossed behind a flame-haired skull. It snapped in the wind before noon, a banner of defiance. That night, Anne stood before the crew, 20 men, some wounded, some loyal already. She told them no lies. "We fight. We take. We burn what tries to burn us. But we don't run. You sail with me, you sail with truth." A murmur. Then a cheer. Mary stepped beside her. "We're not ghosts in men's clothing anymore. We're storms in plain sight." A storm, indeed. That night, the Delilah sailed into the dark with her new flag, her new name whispered among the waves. The Widow's Flame. And its 2 captains were ready to set the sea on fire. The sun had barely broken the horizon when the lookout shouted, "Sails!" to the northeast, and rushed to the bow, heart thrumming like cannon fire. Mary followed, her fingers tightening around the telescope. In the golden morning mist, 3 silhouettes emerged like ghosts, sleek, disciplined, merciless. Royal Navy. The HMS Cerberus, flanked by 2 gunboats. Flags high, guns loaded, and heading straight for the Widow's Flame. And muttered a curse under her breath. "They know we're out here." "They've probably been tracking us since Nassau," Mary replied, her voice grim but steady. "We made too much noise." The crew stirred, tension rising like fog on the deck. Some looked ready to jump ship. Others just looked to Anne. She inhaled deeply. The salt stung her lungs, but the fear sharpened her. "We outrun them," she said. "We know these waters. They don't." Mary grinned. "Or we outsmart them." The chase began before noon. The widow's flame twisted between islets and shallow reefs, dancing like a shadow. Mary took the helm and commanded the sails. Each creak of the ship, each gust of wind, became a lifeline. At dusk, the British fired a warning shot. Water erupted just meters from their stern. Crew ducked. Wood splintered. And didn't flinch. Instead, she climbed to the bowsprit, wind in her hair, coat whipping like a flag of fire, and screamed into the open sea. "You want us? Come and bleed for it." The men stared. Not a pirate, not a woman, but a tempest. The HMS Cerberus slowed. Wary now. Not because of strength. Because of belief. They weren't chasing criminals anymore. They were chasing legends. The sun dipped low, bleeding orange over the shattered hulls of forgotten ships. Anne and Mary crouched among the splintered wood and twisted metal, hearts pounding louder than the crashing waves. The widow's flame was gone, set ablaze in the last battle. The sea had swallowed their freedom, but not their fire. They had allies here once, smugglers and outcasts, but trust was a currency scarcer than gold. Anne pressed a soaked finger to her lips, signaling silence. Mary scanned the darkening jungle edge, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. Suddenly, footsteps. Not the friendly kind. Figures emerged, pirates turned traitors, faces twisted with greed and hate. "Thought you'd slip away, did you?" snarled a voice. "The crown's gold is heavier than your secrets." Anne's hand flew to her cutlass. Mary reached for her pistol. But betrayal cut deeper than blades. A gunshot cracked. Mary stumbled, a crimson bloom spreading beneath her ribs. Anne caught her before she fell, fury erupting in a guttural scream. "Run," and Mary gasped. "Don't look back." Anne hesitated, but survival was sharper than love. She vanished into the night, the ocean's roar drowning the echoes of loss. After escaping the betrayal, Anne moved like a ghost through the mangroves. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and fury, but her feet were steady. The jungle closed in, dark, wet, and alive. Every rustle could mean an enemy, every shadow a trap. She had lost Mary, but she hadn't lost the fight. Her thoughts flashed to the crew she had once commanded, now scattered or captured. Her promise to Mary burned bright. She would survive, for both of them. A distant howl pierced the silence. Anne's hand went to her pistol, eyes scanning the darkness. But something else answered the call, a soft whistle, barely audible. Hope! The faint whistle led in deeper into the jungle's embrace. Branches scraped her skin, rain slicked her hair, but she pressed on, driven by a fragile hope. Ahead, a figure emerged, a man cloaked in shadows, eyes sharp as a hawk's. "Captain and Bonny," he said quietly. "I've heard of your flame. You're not alone." He was a former pirate turned rebel, fighting the crown's grip from the shadows. His knowledge of the islands, secret coves, and hidden routes was invaluable. Together, they formed a plan, strike back at the Crown's forces, rescue the captured crew, and reclaim the widow's flame. And nodded, feeling the weight of her loss but also the spark of new purpose. Mary's fire lived on, kindled in every act of rebellion, every whispered secret in the dark. Under the cover of night, Anne and her new ally crept toward the Crown's outpost. Guards patrolled the perimeter, lanterns casting long, trembling shadows over stone walls. Every step was a risk. One misstep could mean capture or death. But Anne's resolve was ironclad. With careful signals and silent moves, they infiltrated the camp, freeing captured pirates, including some of Anne's old crew. The night echoed with hushed orders and the clink of shackles falling away. As dawn approached, the rebels retreated with their liberated comrades and plans to take back the widow's flame, still held by the British. Anne's heart beat with a fierce rhythm, hope mingled with vengeance. Mary's spirit seemed to guide her through the dark, a steady flame lighting the path ahead. The sea churned with fury as Anne's ragtag fleet approached the British-held harbour. Cannons roared, sending thunder across the water, and smoke curled into the sky like dark serpents. Anne stood at the helm of the flagship, her eyes blazing with determination. Mary's memory was a shield, her courage fueling every command. The battle was brutal. Grappling hooks flew, swords clashed, and men screamed in the chaos. Anne led the charge, cutting through enemies with the ferocity of a storm. The tide turned as the rebels reclaimed the widow's flame, her black flag rising triumphantly once more. But victory came at a price. Wounds deepened, and the cost of freedom weighed heavy. The dawn was quiet, too quiet. Anne stood alone on a cliff, wind tugging at her damp coat, eyes fixed on the endless sea. Mary was gone, taken by betrayal and blood. But her spirit burned within Anne's heart, a fire no ocean could drown. She had lost more than a friend. She had lost a part of herself. But surrender was never her way. Anne raised her cutlass high, the blade catching the first light. "I fight for you," as she whispered. "For the ones who cannot." She turned from the cliff, stepping back toward the world, harsh, wild, and unforgiving. Legends don't die with the fall of a ship or the silence of a voice. They live on, in stories whispered on the wind, in the crackle of a campfire, in the defiant flutter of a flag against the storm. And Bonny's flame would never die.
you